All right, welcome back to another In Session Film bonus content episode that will go live on our Patreon page to begin with. So, a big thank you to all of our patrons for your support. Really, really do appreciate it. If you're listening to this after the early access period is over, welcome to you all as well. Uh, Maybe you're listening to this via Patreon, or maybe you're watching this on YouTube. However, you're joining us, thank you for being a part. I'm very, very excited. And for those that are non patrons, if you want early access to any bonus content episode we do, that's patreon.com/in session film. You can sign up for as low as $1 a month, Christian. $1 a month. That's like one taco at
$1.
Taco Bell. One taco at Taco Bell. That's all I'm asking for.
That is one McChicken from McDonald's.
Exactly. That's nothing. It's nothing. But you get early access to all of our bonus content episodes, such as this. But also, this last week, my lovely co-host on the flagship podcast that we have, Brendan Cassidy, we got together to talk about the Ti West films X and Pearl. Oh my gosh, it was a lot of fun. We had a great time talking about those two movies. I was able to even convince Brendan to come on to the Pearl bandwagon with me, which was really great. So again, that's all available at patreon.com/in-session-film. Go and check out all of that. However, for this show, once again, joined by the great Christian Eulenberg. Christian, thank you for being here, man.
Of course,
appreciate it as always.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you.
There you go. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Exactly. And so Christian is here and has been a gracious co-host with me as we've been talking about season 1 of The Rings of Power. And here we are, the final 2 episodes of season 1. We're talking about 7 and 8 on this specific episode. So Christian, I want to hear your thoughts, man. Let's get into this. People are talking about it. Episode 7, episode 8. What'd you think of these last 2 eps?
Honestly, these last 2 episodes were perfect. As Homelander would say, down to the last minute details from the boys. For a while there, I was worried during the beginning of this journey that I wasn't going to enjoy this as much as I wanted to. You know, like fantasy's back. We have House of the Dragon, we have Rings of Power, and for a while there, I was very worried for the Rings of Power that I wasn't going to be sucked into this world. But I mean, you know, every single season has its hits and misses, but these last 2 episodes, like, really just like sucked me in. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, especially the finale, which I was, I teared up a little bit. I was like, this
oh my gosh,
in a while. Yeah. But between 7 and 8, like, I think it was a perfect pairing to kind of, you know, the penultimate episode where, you know, things start to somewhat form together. Like, you see things kind of being pushed in a certain way. But then, of course, with the season finale, it's like there's a finality, but there's also this like looming, you know, hey, you know, we're going to leave you with this small little teaser until next season. And
yeah,
it blew me away, especially for the finale, because I was like, there are some red herrings I was not expecting, and I'm very glad that I did not go down the rabbit hole during, like, on Twitter about like 7 and 8, because I kind of had to watch some a little bit back to back because it's just been crazy. But I was able to avoid spoilers, and I love both episodes equally. What about you?
I really like these episodes as well. And I will say, Christian, it was really interesting. And I guess before I get into it, let's go ahead and lay this out there on the table now. We're going to talk spoilers on this episode. I think we really need to get into the reveals here to not only recap these 2 episodes, but really the entire season and our discussions leading up to this point, because there's been so many theories thrown around, which we have commented on. So I do think we need to talk about them. So, spoiler alert for anyone listening to this. I assume you have seen these episodes, but just in case, you never know, have to throw out that caveat there. We will get into spoilers here. But that is to say, I'm with you. I really like these last 2 episodes, and I was a little bit worried at first, Christian, because what has been the theme for me this entire episode? It's been inconsistency, right?
Yeah.
For every 2 steps forward, we take 2 steps backward. That's been, the rhythm of this first season for me. And I really liked episode 7. Really liked it a lot. Then we get to episode 8. And there is that moment where these 3 mysterious figures who we haven't seen in like 3 episodes, by the way.
Yeah.
So that was a little weird from a writing and editing perspective. The moment they show back up, you're like, oh yeah, I've totally forgot that these guys were introduced like 4 episodes ago and then completely disappeared. But they show back up and they have an encounter with who I have been calling Gandalf this entire series, because let's be honest, that's who this was going to be.
Yeah.
But there's a misdirect, because what happens? They're like, it's Sauron. Oh, we're here. We found you, Sauron. And when the moment happened, in my mind, I was like, oh no. No. If that's how this is going to go, you have jumped the shark. I am off the bandwagon. Like I'm just completely not with this at all. And this is off the heels of 7, which I loved. So it's like, of course this would happen, right? Where I had loved 7 and then 8 is just going to take the wind right out of my sails. That's how it was initially. But they saved themselves. They saved themselves with the misdirect. Now, I will say this, though. From a writing perspective, now, Gandalf being Gandalf and him finding the light. Great moment. I love that. Everything with the Harfoots in episode 8 is immaculate. It is so, so good. I'm with you. We'll have to talk about those final few moments, because the emotion was blistering. It was so good. So I loved all of that. I love that misdirection. However, we do get the reveal of Sauron.
What?
And again, I don't know how to feel about it. No, we talked about this all the way back on, what was it, episode 3, I believe it was, where there is the moment with Galadriel, and what we come to find out is Sauron when he's in the prison cell there.
Yeah.
And he reveals his entire plan. Like, as we know it and how it's going to come to fruition, he lays it all out there. And at that time, I'm like, there's no way this is Sauron, because this is way too transparent. Like, from a writing perspective, this makes no sense that he's just going to reveal everything the way he does in that prison cell if he's Sauron. So I was like, no way. There's no way they're going to do it that lazily. Well, turns out that's exactly what happened.
I was still shocked
that she was with Sauron, the guy that she has been seeking out this entire time. And she had no inclination that that's who that was. Like, she's been seeking revenge. She stopped Sauron from killing another elf lord. Because it's not your time, Sauron. It's not your turn for revenge. It's all about me. And it turns out he was right there the whole time.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that is interesting dramatic irony. I don't know. I'd have to think about that maybe a little bit more. Maybe we can talk through it here. I will say this. It does feel like the writers are in the writer's room feeling very proud of themselves. Like, man,
I'm pretty proud.
That transparency, that dramatic irony, we killed it.
It's like She-Hulk episode 9.
But no. That was actually good writing. That was fun and clever.
It was.
I don't, and I'm being a little sarcastic here for funsies' sake. So maybe my comments are a little facetious, but I don't know. I don't know about that. I still think the writing of that is a little dull, to be honest, because it feels so obvious. It feels so transparent. It's right there. It's
In your
tangible
face,
in a
yeah.
way that I don't think is all that interesting. Now we do know that Sauron was a part of forging these rings. The way that it all ends, though, like, I don't know how he's going to be involved as far as the rings for men, the rings for the dwarves. All of that is still to come.
Yeah.
And is he going to be involved in that? Because the exposition, the lore of all of this suggests that Sauron is still a part of that in some way. Or is it just now the elves that are going to be making these rings? That to me is a little muddled at this point. But later seasons could absolutely bring clarity to all of that. So that's more of a question than a criticism at this point. But I still don't know if I like the writing and the reveal of Sauron, because to me it just feels a little vapid.
It threw me for a loop. Like there was a little sinking in my stomach for a second. I was like, yo, what? Well, I was like, okay, like I had a feeling it's like, okay, who's Mephisto, of whatever. But I was like, okay, I don't know. Like I had a feeling it might be him. I was like, there's no way. But like you said, when it came to the stranger, because this entire time, we're 8 episodes in, and not once have they even said the stranger's name, even after revealing that he's not Sauron. That it's just he's a wizard. Obviously, it's very much like screaming, "This is Gandalf," because
it's Gandalf. I'm still holding to that ethos. It's Gandalf.
I think it is too.
And come on, like the way that ends with the two of them going off, how is that not reminiscent of Frodo?
I was crying.
Gandalf?
I was crying.
I
was crying. I'm like, this is beautiful. Even in episode 7, with everything with Durin and Elrond, because Durin stands up, and I apologize, we're like jumping all over the place, but I wanted to talk about their relationship is one of the best parts of the entire show so far. But it's Durin standing up for Elrond, saying, like, he is my brother, and apparently, he has a secret name that only is supposed to be reserved for kin, family, friends, and he does consider Elrond a brother. I don't know what his secret name is, but I'm assuming it's going to be Elrond's. But we'll just have to wait and see. But it's so beautiful that I just wanted to bring that up, because I think that was just a big highlight of episode 7, because it just really brings home their friendship.
Yeah. Well, I think what I really liked about these last 2 episodes, because I mentioned, I believe the last time we talked, that really the only emotionally moving moment for me was the moment when Isildur's father, or Isildur, attempts to save his father. There was a moment the two of them had, I believe, in episode 6 that was really great.
Yeah.
The pathos of episode 7 and 8 is really robust. It's fantastic stuff. And I think that's what I really loved about these last 2 episodes, is how emotionally involved they are. Because you're right. I mean, Durin is he feels true conviction for Elrond. Like, his love for him is palpable. And not only does he feel a kinship for him, but he understands the stakes that for Elrond and the rest of the elves, like, this is literally life and death. And so much hangs in the balance of them getting the Mithril. And so they go down there, they start digging, and then of course King Durwin gets involved, and there's conflict there. Elrond is kicked out, and it is very hostile. Like, it's the emotional back and forth between Durwin and his father it's volatile stuff, and it's incredible drama. The emotion is really felt. The performances and all of that is fantastic. And And I do love kind of where all of that crystallizes, emotionally speaking. It's absolutely incredible. I do love that. And then of course that carries over to episode 8. I think that emotion is still there, even though there's, I don't think there's any Derwin in
No,
the last
there's not.
episode. But the episode is still emotionally very effective all around. While of course building on the lore of this universe and forging the rings and everything that is to come there. And even you get the transition of the Southland titles into Mordor at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah,
that might be a little bit tacky, but still fun. I can roll with the punches there, even if it's tacky. And we know that's where all of this is going anyway. I mean, we knew that's what was happening here. And I do like that there's costs. I like that there's stakes. Like, people are truly affected by this. There were casualties. I even like that, there's the moment where the little boy walks into the camp and you see a person there disfigured with their leg amputated. It's a little gory and violent for Lord of the Rings anyway.
Oh yeah.
It would fit right in if this was Saving Private Ryan, but it's not. I mean, the Lord of the Rings has never been violent like that. And so I do like that the show is willing to show us the cost of Mordor forging the way that it has.
Yeah.
And they're still, like, those emotional stakes are still there, because we still don't know where Isildur is, right? Like that.
No, we don't.
That's something that's still lingering that we'll get more of in the next season. But that moment with his father, when the queen is like, set the sails, we're going back to Valinor, and he doesn't say anything. There's just a medium shot on him emotionally unraveling there because his son is still out there. Oh my gosh, so good. Absolutely love that.
The queen as well. Yeah. She's blind. And I was like, because when I was watching, I was like, what did she say? I was like, what did she mean by it? I was like, oh. So it's like obviously, like you said, they've lost a lot. The cost of war, especially for the show, has been very it's been in your face, but it's like, that's how it is. I like how it does show you a little bit more. It's the battle between good and evil, and it sometimes, good lost this time around. It really did.
And we knew that was going to be the case to some degree.
Yeah.
And I do like that the show is willing to show us that. And also going back to Waldreg, I believe the character's name is Isildur's father. Isildur's father.
Yeah.
And because there's that moment where he's not facing the queen. He becomes emotionally vulnerable there as she states that they're going to sail off. But I also love, I believe this was right before or right after, there's the moment with Isildur's horse, who is not compliant at all, right? And he's jumping around and he's trying to calm him down. Like, hey, we need to get you on the ship. We have to go.
Yeah.
And the horse just won't settle and he lets him go. But like the moment they share together with this animal that and that clearly has a bond with his son, that's why the horse is not behaving. For that moment to occur, it was so poignant. It was such a subtle little moment, but so effective, I think.
Yeah, because and we've learned in this series, or this in general, if you have to create, like you would create a bond with like a house pet, like a cat or a dog, it's the same thing with a horse. Probably more so with horses. They always, I forgot what it was. I was watching some TV show. They're like, oh, what's the secret of life? And someone was like, oh, get yourself a horse. And like, they're saying, they're like giant dogs. It's great. But we see Isildur's horse is also affected. He has formed
Yeah.
a bond with Isildur, and it's it is very sad because it's it's two beings, even though a human and an animal mourning over the loss of they don't know if they're alive or dead, but they just know that this isn't right, like something's not right, like it's very powerful when it comes to that.
It is such an interesting microcosm of the grief that everyone is sharing, but that moment of intimacy between two different species, but having a moment of shared grief, I think is so fascinating.
Yeah.
And again, it's also the subtlety of it for me. I don't know how you feel, Christian. I'm a huge fan of subtlety. And I think that's what's so beautiful about that moment is while there is some dialogue there, a lot of it really is just the tender interaction, the quiet, the stillness of that moment between them as
visual
they share that grief.
storytelling. I love
the
it.
Visual,
It's
exactly.
great.
It's so fantastic. And that's a moment that could have easily have been snipped out of this episode, and I don't know if much would have changed, but that moment does add value.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Because it shows that Isildur is like it's also the show telling the audience like we have not forgotten about Isildur and
or the grief that his father has for him.
Yeah.
And that is important. And I imagine as season 2 ramps back up, we'll probably get some sort of through line with that horse searching for Isildur. At least potentially that could be something that they carry through on, But so I liked all of that. And these last 2 episodes here. What did you think of the forging of the rings, how all of that unfolded? Let's get into that a little bit. Obviously, it's the rings of power, man. We have to get into the actual rings of power.
Yeah.
What'd you think of that?
I thought it was beautifully done because not only, just seeing the rings actually being forged, like we kind of see it in Lord of the Rings during the beginning, but this is more of like the full process. Like, hey, this is actually how we're going to melt down this metal, these materials, and reforge them into something else. But not only that, it's and Sauron just saying, giving I forgot the ringmaker's name. I do apologize. Giving him the idea of how to I guess optimize the use of the mithril with like blending it in with other like elements and other materials.
Yeah.
But during the making of the ring right before, it's in order for this to work, Galadriel has to give up the last possession, the last belonging of her brother, the only thing that she has of her brother to remind her of him. And that's also another a small little moment that's so impactful because she was very like she knows how important this is to like save the elves, and obviously after Sauron reveals himself to her, she's probably more okay with it, but it's still like that's like saying goodbye to your brother, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And or a family member where it's like this is the only thing I have left to remember them by outside of my own memories. But I thought it was beautifully done. I was like, this is so cool to like actually see how these rings are being created and how it needed to be 3 for balance. Because as Galadriel was saying, if it's just 1, I think that was it's in danger of corruption. I forgot what she said if it was just 2. And then she's like 3 needs to be for balance to put everyone in check. But I thought it was beautifully done. It was just it was mesmerizing, honestly. Like just this entire time, like everything, all the special effects, it's just they took their time with this.
It did.
Probably more so than what we have liked, but it came out so beautifully, and I absolutely love it.
I mean, I've talked several times how I loved the pacing of this season and the methodical nature of it. And I mentioned a moment ago that I'm a big fan of subtlety. You know what else I'm a fan of artistically, Christian? Duality.
Ooh,
and I have to give the writers here credit even though I was not fan, I wasn't much of a fan of the reveal of Sauron as it relates to Galadriel because of their history together. I still don't think that makes any sense whatsoever. Or the use of dramatic irony there, I think, is much more vapid than the writers thinks that it is. However, to give them credit, the inclusion of him or how that reveal is utilized as it relates to the forging of the rings, I do think is actually pretty clever and really well done, because we knew that Sauron was going to be a factor in the creation of these rings and the forging of them. The question coming into this is, how were they going to execute that? And I think a much more trite version of this is that Celebrimbor, is that his name?
I think so.
I think that's his name. I'm not really great with these Elvish names.
So many.
Yeah. Celebrimbor, I think, is the... Anyway, with him, I think it would have been easier, certainly lazier, to just maybe give him like a dark side. And maybe there's a small element of that. To be fair, we may go there slightly, because there's that moment when he's talking to the Elvish king and he's like, he's all hyped up on the power of these rings.
Yeah.
It's in a spiritual realm. It's something our flesh doesn't understand.
Yeah, the unseen world. Yeah,
the unseen world. And he talks about it as if it's this place of addiction for him. It's this higher plane that he is desperately wanting to get to.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a little darkness there,
or selfishness altogether.
Or selfishness. Yeah. I will say, they, on the whole, tonally, I don't think there's anything malicious with that character. He's not. I don't think he's like Team Sauron, but secretly. I don't think that's the case at all.
Like that one man guy who made Mordor essentially with the helmet.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that. Exactly. Great comparison. Great comp. I don't think that's what's happening here. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's what's happening here. And I think that would have been a much easier thing to do, is that you have an inside man. You have a mole within the Elvish ranks. One that's been around for a while and then has been able to pull off a lot of magic tricks, so to speak, for centuries, for a long, long time. To have him, like for Sauron to secretly have him in the palm of his hand and will, just pull the trigger when the time is right. That would have been a much more trite version of this, but that's not what happens. It's Helbron kind of. He like very cunningly finds a way in by manipulating Galadriel.
Yep.
And that is the one moment of their interaction that I did find interesting is he's like, hey, look, I told you I just wanted to stay here in Valinor. Yeah. I just wanted to make weapons here. It was you dragged me into this. And so
silver tongued devil, and
there is truth to that. Like there's like, and that is the one thing of those early episodes that they did well, is that like it showed that he was very passive to get involved into this conflict. And he let Galadriel do the work for him.
Yeah.
And she had to go out and find a reason to pull him in. And she finds information that, I have to go back and to look at this
tree thing.
Well, because she does the same thing in episode, what was that, 3, where they go off to that library mountain thing, and she finds the scrolls, and she's like, look, here it says you're the king of the Southlands. How? I'm not sure. Like, does that not contrast and juxtapose the scroll that she brings out in episode 8, where she's like, you're not a part of this family tree, because the king of the Southlands died centuries ago.
How does she know that makes no sense? Besides, because I feel like she was like, who are you? And like, like we know who this is, but like,
yeah, it again, like the writing, the reveal of Sauron from Galadriel's perspective, I still have a lot of issues / questions about. Like, there's too many inconsistencies. Again, going back to that with the writing there that I don't love. However, from Sauron's perspective, the inclusion of him here with the forging of the rings, I do think is pretty clever from that regard. That he kind of manipulates Galadriel into bringing him in. So when he gets to,
where are they at?
The name is escaping me of the Elvish land there. It's very organic. Like
it is.
It's something that feels natural to the rhythms of how this story has evolved. So it makes sense as to why he's there. It's not suspicious at all. Then he has that moment where, he says, hey, look, we combine these elements. Maybe we got something here. And he shows a little bit of wit in that regard. And that is clear foreshadowing there, or at least it's a big clue that this guy might not be who he says he is, that, that he might be Sauron, and this is his way into forging these rings and kind of getting the process started a little bit. Like that, from that angle of it, I have to give the writers credit because I do think that is very good. From Hellbrand's perspective, the clever tactics he uses to organically find his way, to forging the rings there and getting that going. That's great. And then from a production design perspective, as you're talking about, all of that is handled gracefully. It's very, very well shot, really well done. So again, duality. From one perspective, it's excellent. From Galadriel's perspective, it's still very murky, and I don't think it works, or at least I have a lot of questions. But on the whole, I'm on board. On the whole, I like where it's going. I think it handles its business fairly well, and I'm excited to kind of see where the rest of this goes.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and it's you make a really good point because I didn't really think about it just from Galadriel's perspective, because like we said before, she goes to like Mountain Library, and I was like, someone's information here is like outdated.
Something's missing. Am I wrong? That is correct, right?
Yeah,
in episode 3, she finds a scroll.
Yeah,
that connects him to. That connects him to the Southlands. And then in the last episode, she finds a different scroll that says the opposite.
Yeah, I wasn't.
So which is it?
I'm not sure if the scroll from episode 3 was like a family tree thing, or if it was just saying, oh, like she found the sigil.
Yeah, I don't think it was.
I can't remember.
I again, I'd have to go back and rewatch it.
Yeah,
because the details are fuzzy. I don't think it was a family tree as much as it was like a map or
it was something like that.
There was details about the land, or there was a symbol on it that connected to like something he was wearing, like around his neck.
Because he said, "Oh, I'm from the Southlands," and I think that's when she made the connection.
So maybe she was just assuming.
I think so.
If that's all that it is that she misinterprets the necklace that he's wearing, and that's all that it is, then my apologies to the writers. and it's just a character thing. It's a character flaw.
Yeah,
that she misinterprets the moment, and there's nothing objectively tethering him to the Southland.
Yeah,
she makes it
like, oh, yeah, right,
and then rectifies that, or at least finds clarity in the final episode with the other scroll that provides evidence that he was never who. He said he speaks to that. He's like, I never said that I was who you thought I was.
That is true, though. He was not technically lying.
No, and that's what's so funny about, like, again, the writing of Galadriel that is a little weird to me, because like her approach to it, and I don't know if this is a writing. I assume it's a writing thing. It could simply be a performance thing. Maybe on paper it was a little bit more clear. But like either way, in the final execution of it all, like Galadriel, the way Galadriel approaches that is still a little strange to me because she's like, why don't you just tell me who you are? Like she mystery that she still can't figure out. And it's like you've been with this guy the whole time. Like, why are you constantly missing the boat here?
Yeah, and I can't remember what drove her to look for that scroll the second time for
There was
episode.
something he said, like there was a line of dialogue, or no, there was what happened was they were trying to convince the Elven King to forge these rings, right? And there was a line from again the one that I struggle to pronounce.
Elf number 12.
no, it's the main character.
Yeah, I know.
Celebrimbor.
Yeah.
You know, he says a line that is very reminiscent of something she heard from Helbron or from someone in the Southlands.
That's
you know,
what it
like
was.
there was connective tissue there. And so, and the camera is focused on her as he says that line. And so we get a reaction shot there. And so then there's a cut. The next scene is her going off to find these scrolls.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And so she, again, is still not sure of who this person is. And again, the way she approaches it is just a little bit odd. But maybe in hindsight, maybe rewatching it through the prism of having the entire context in mind, maybe it'll play differently. Because that often happens once you get the full context of what's happening.
Yeah,
that things can change on a rewatch.
Yeah,
I think the Lord of the Rings is that way. That is the brilliance of those movies is that because it's so full of nuance that every time you watch them, you can pick up on new things. And maybe that will be the case with Galadriel on a rewatch of this first season. That's certainly possible. I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt there, but it's just a little strange to me. And then to kind of piggyback off of that a little bit, and maybe part of this is just the direction of these episodes as well. I'm not sure who directed this final episode, but like Galadriel approaches Sauron and is still mystified that she can't figure out who this person is. And that's one thing. Maybe that works, maybe that doesn't. But then there's the moment where Elrond finds the scroll, doesn't really say anything, but he looks mystified himself, as if maybe he's had some sort of epiphany. Then he walks up to the room where they are finalizing the forging of the rings. And again, he doesn't say anything. And you get this extended musical cue and them looking at the rings, them just staring at each other, extended musical cue even more. And they're just cut back and forth between them looking at each other. And that's it. Like, that's how that whole sequence ends.
It's a telepath.
It's weird.
It's a telepath we cannot hear. Yeah, I feel like he didn't want to be like, yo, that was Sauron. Because they're like, oh, where is he? And then Galadriel's like, oh, he's not welcome. Like, we don't know where he is, but he's not welcome back here. Because she doesn't even say who he is.
No, so she doesn't tell them. No.
Yeah.
So and I understand they're building mystery for season 2. That's ultimately what's happening there. I just feel like in execution, it's a little melodramatic. And I don't know if it needed to be. I don't know if they needed to heighten that mystery that way, especially knowing that they weren't going to crystallize it in that moment. You could have just, shown us Elrond picking up the scroll in the water, looking a bit puzzled, and then cut. But that's not what happens. You show us him running up the little stairway. And you're building suspense with the music.
So gracefully, too.
And then he goes into the room, and we're still building suspense. And then they're all looking at each other like, what's happening?
He doesn't say anything.
He doesn't say anything. Like it just feels a little unnecessary to
That's
me.
fair.
Like it's a little melodramatic. I don't know if we needed that per se.
Yeah.
And I understand that I'm maybe grasping at straws because on the whole, the episode was actually very good. But
Oh
like
yeah.
these are like little nitpicks that I have that on the whole, they don't detract from the episode too much. But
Mm-mm.
the little things that I just found a little bit odd in the filmmaking and in the writing.
That's fair
Because
enough.
I did think the episode mostly was pretty good. And
Yeah,
I'm
I
excited
thought it was a
to see
great
where it
finale.
goes.
Like
Yeah.
they definitely stuck the landing. Like that was a well thought out finale. There's a lot of mystery towards the end, and of course, the the emotional.
Yeah, should we talk about it? The
I think
Harfoots,
so, man.
the
I was
time.
bawling,
Oh
like,
my god. It is
and I
absolutely
love it. I love how the stranger, he's fine. He's no longer like this, like 11 kind of person like in Stranger Things, where she has very limited vocabulary. Now that he has a staff to harness his magic, and they don't say it's Gandalf. They call him something, and then it translates to the Harfoot's tongue as wise one or wizard,
Mm,
and everyone's like, oh, that's him. That's Gandalf, like we said. But it's, man, I mean, the Harfoots have gone through so much, and they lost. Ironically, they lost to one person who was like, yeah, we're just gonna leave these other people behind.
mhm.
Kind of like how they do, but it was so emotional and just caring, and it just filled my heart with love and like warmth because it's so familiar.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and even the stranger, he says, when, and I know I'm jumping around here really quick, I apologize. When Nori and the stranger are about to, set off on their adventure, they're going to, I forgot the name of the place, but Nori doesn't know where to go because she's
Yeah.
like, the
She's
stranger's like,
never
oh,
been away. Yeah.
right. The stranger's like, oh, they're all waving goodbye. And she's like, if I turn around,
Yeah.
I'm not coming back. Like, and
Yeah.
that's how, we see how much like the Harfoots and her family means to her. But when the stranger says, oh, I find it best to like, I think we should go this way. Like, I find it best to like follow your nose. That's taken from,
Yeah.
is it Fellowship of the Ring? Because I think he says it to either
I think so.
Yeah, and I was like,
Yeah.
that's Gandalf. But what
I
did you
know. I
think,
feel like I
man?
need to look this
I'm all over the place, and I do apologize, but it was just, man, if that was like probably one of the best goodbyes I've ever like seen.
Yeah.
And it's not just like a cheeky, like, oh, this is the end, or like this is a departure. Like, we spent time with these characters. Granted, there's a lot of pacing issues that we went through, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of, Nori is kind of stuck by the stranger, and she's like the one Harfoot has that sense of adventure where she's
Mhm.
like, I want to see what's out there. Like, this is very Bilbo, very Frodo,
Mhm.
Merry and Pippin, and I just love it. I love it.
Yep. And you are correct. It is when in doubt, always follow your nose
Yeah,
is in reference to Gandalf in the Fellowship of the Ring.
that's what
So
it was.
can
Yeah.
confirm that. And I was right. I told you from the very beginning, the moment we first saw him, I said that is Gandalf.
Yeah.
And not because of some crazy theory or how he looks, fire, none of that.
Mm-mm.
None of that mattered to me. The reason that he was Gandalf is because of his relationship to the Harfoots and in particular Nori,
Mhm.
who, as we've talked about, is Frodo.
Yeah.
In this story, he's Frodo.
Frodo in a
And-
past life.
I'm telling you, that's going to happen in the next season or sometime down the road. We're going to find out that they're related. 100% that's going to
Yeah.
happen. But spiritually, how is that different? And not just Frodo, Bilbo. His relationship with the hobbits is very reminiscent of Nori and Mystery Man. Gandalf. Because he's Gandalf.
Yeah,
That's the
Gandalf.
reason he's Gandalf, not anything else, not other,
Right.
no mysticism, no fire, no stars. He even says the word wizard at one point. The word that you would use is wizard to describe me. No, none of that is what points to him being Gandalf. It is his relationship to Nori more than anything else.
Yeah. And I'm glad they didn't actually say, oh, like, I'm Gandalf, kind of thing. It's like, we know, like, I love it. It was subtle, like, oh, like, I'm a wizard. And it's like, yeah, it's a bit ambiguous, but it's like, you know, if you know, you know. So it was, it was perfect. I mean, it was.
Let's talk about performances. So a few days ago, Christian, I saw this movie called Catherine Called Birdie.
I did too.
And I know you really liked it. You told me that you really fell for that movie. And I liked the movie, but what I most liked about that film is Andrew Scott's performance. He is incredible because there's this incredible transition from drunken obliviousness to this epiphany that his daughter is going to be leaving his life forever. Potentially. And when he has that epiphany, there is a shot on Andrew Scott's face. Again, no dialogue, visual storytelling. It is all in his performance he can't even look at Birdie as she walks away. He looks at the wall and just begins to weep. It is some of the best acting, singular acting I have seen all year. It is absolutely terrific. And we get the exact same thing in episode 8 with Dylan Smith, a phenomenal performance. And while the way he treats Nori earlier in the season, it's not the same. It's not like a total obliviousness, but I think it's fair to say they're not connecting in the same ways. Nori is just a very different person than her family or most of the Harfoots, really. And so there's a little bit of a disconnect there. But similarly, there comes that moment when he realizes that this is probably the last time I will ever get to see my daughter. And he even says, like, here, let me take a look at you. And when you get the reverse shot where we first see Nori reacting to that moment. But when we get the reverse angle of it, and there is the look of her father, of Dylan Smith, reacting to this moment, looking at her gracefully, that this is the last time I will probably physically see her. And he unravels, and the performance, again, no dialogue. It is utter perfection. It is so good. It is some of the best acting we have seen so far. And it's the subtlety of it. It is the subtlety of it. It is him just simply having a realization, a human moment that is absolutely wonderful among the sacrifice, right? Like, he could easily say, no, you have to stay here with me to protect you. He's letting her go. He's the one that has made the decision. He's encouraging her to go. And he's the one making that sacrifice along with his wife. And coupled with that sacrifice is this incredible intimate moment that is handled just perfectly through performance. Less dialogue. There's some dialogue, and I do love the banter where he says something like, you're going off. I haven't taught you enough.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up. And I love it.
That it is so gutting, but in the best ways. I was listening.
Because he feels like you said, there is that disconnect between him and his daughter, but at the same time, he's like, man, he's like, I feel like I haven't touched anything. I feel like, and I feel like that translates to, I haven't spent enough time with you to get you ready for the real world, or just quality time altogether. And you really see that, even with her mother, that it's the Harf they really do stick together. Like that's probably why outside of I would probably put the Harfoots or the Hobbits a little bit above the dwarves because it's just like if I was ever to live in that world, I would be a Hobbit 100%. Like they are just living the good life,
Mhm.
and it's it's beautiful how even with Nori's best friend, like at first she doesn't want to like look at her. Like she's like,
Mhm.
okay, like bye. But like obviously it's bugging her. And then they have that longer, embrace right before she meets up with, we're just gonna call him Gandalf.
Yeah.
And it really is, she's like, like you're my best friend in this like whole wide world. And
Mhm.
like that is a very comforting thing to know that not only that Nori is loved by her family, but by the entire like tribe of Harfoots, knowing that they
Mhm.
genuinely care, and especially after what happened with the Black Harfoot. I'm sorry, I forgot his name as well, but I thought that
Mhm.
was also very nice that they stayed with him as he
Yeah.
passed away, as the
Wanted to
sun
see the
was rising.
sunset. Yeah.
Yeah, instead of, oh, we're just gonna leave you behind because that's what you said that you were gonna do. But he's
That's what they
truly a
do.
monster.
I know.
But
Now
it
now
was
that sorry to speak to that real fast,
yeah.
that's a great use of irony.
Mm,
I love that because there's true purpose to it and there's beauty to it.
mm.
So that I do love. It still confounds me that they have this ethos of like, well, if you get left behind,
Sorry,
sure,
we'll remember you, but you're
exactly.
dead.
That's it. Sorry, there's nothing we can do. And then here comes a moment where they could leave,
But they stay.
but they stay. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that to me is absolutely gorgeous. I love that.
Mhm. Yeah, but it's and I mean Nori's best friend. I'm blanking on her name as well, but man, she was so sincere and so genuine in that conversation, like, hey,
Yeah.
like don't worry about everyone else. I'm gonna be our constellation guide, our tour guide, or to whatever their next destination is.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I love their banter too, right? Because
yeah.
she says something to the effect Nori's friend is like, he's a good friend in a pinch.
Yeah.
And her response, again, the shot reverse shot where Nori is, saying something like, well, never as good as you.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the
Because that
tender
is her
quality
best
there is
friend.
so great.
That is her true friend. And that is what I loved. It brought me to tears, man. I was like, I just want to watch that
Yeah.
scene all over again.
I do think the performances more than anything make that entire sequence, but I do have to give the writing a
Mm,
ton of credit as well. I've been hard on these writers where they have frustrated me with their inconsistencies, and I still hold to those inconsistencies and the questions I have. But I have to give them credit where credit is due because through a lot of this episode, the writing was strong.
mm,
And that entire sequence is immaculate. The writing, the banter between all those characters
mm,
is phenomenal. It is so great. It is perfectly performed. The tenderness in that entire sequence, whether it be her friend or her dad, or even that moment with her mother, which is
mm.
equally as beautiful, is just so good. And then we mentioned the little interaction she has with Gandalf there, as playful as it is, and it's
Mm.
mostly as they're setting off on their own journey. And I believe where they're heading off, I think he says is Rune or
Yeah, I
something
think
like
so.
that.
Mm.
And I don't know Middle Earth lore
No,
as
not like
deeply as
that.
many other.
Well, I can tell you about Westeros, but I can't
Well,
tell you about Middle Earth.
anyway, I was going to say, as an amateur in this space, is that shorthand, or is that maybe a predestination for what eventually becomes Rohan? Is that what
Ooh.
that is? Like, that's my best guess without knowing the geography as
Mm.
well as others.
Yeah.
But
I think that's a very good guess. I mean, I don't see why not, but if there's anyone out there listening,
let us
definitely
know.
yeah,
Maybe I'm way wrong, and that's
yeah.
perfectly fine.
there's someone out there like screaming and be like, no, you're totally wrong. But no, it's there's a lot to this world. So I mean, I forgive us.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I apologize if I've sounded a little harsh, at least earlier in this episode, with some of my criticisms. But I had to bring those up because throughout this entire season, we've talked a lot about these inconsistencies, especially with Galadriel. So I had to bring that up. But I do think these last two episodes on the whole have been very good. And even Galadriel herself, despite some of the questions I have about the writing, I still think with what we see her in episode 7 and 8, mostly was also very good. Don't get me wrong. I still like, it was in an episode 7 as they're in the aftermath of Mordor in its very beginnings, and she is in the woods with the Theo character. There's some great interactions they have as well. Yeah. Like I really liked Galadriel in episode 7 and how she was humanized more because of everything that's happening around her. And, it's like everything has lost control.
Maybe that's the reason why. I'm sorry to cut you off. I think that's the reason why now we're starting to relate to Galadriel more is because she wasn't she wasn't humanized. Like even Elrond, I mean, I believe he's half elf, but regardless, I feel like he is a more humanized elf, with his relationship with Durin. But we didn't really, I guess you could say that Theo kind of brought that out in her a little bit. Maybe it was a mix between Theo and the beginning of Mordor that kind of humbled her a little bit because, she was acting like she owned the place when she was in oh my gosh, Numenor. I was like, Galadriel, like
she literally walked in there and started making demands as if she was the queen.
But now she is more humbled. She has been given a reality check that, I mean, she wants to fight for this greater cause, but in a way she's making it about her instead of everyone else and about her sacrifices and her goals. So I feel like she kind of, even though she recruits everyone through Numenor, I feel like she's now understanding like these are beings who live in this world as much as you, and everyone's affected in their own way.
And that is important for the character going forward, and why I'm actually very, very, very excited for Galadriel in season 2 and going forward in this series, because I do think now with where her character crystallizes, we are going to get less of that angsty Galadriel, the revenge-driven Galadriel, and we'll start to see her, begin to evolve toward the Galadriel we know of in The Lord of the Rings, which is ultimately why, even though I have questions in execution with it all, the way things end with her and Sauron, that to me is a little bit interesting because it's as if she's come to terms with where things are going for the Elvish people and also her own, emotional vulnerabilities. And I say that specifically because of one, Sauron does kind of get the upper hand on her. I think she starts to see the bigger picture a little bit, that it's beyond her own selfish desires. Especially off the heels of what you were just talking about, what I was just talking about with witnessing everything there in the Southlands and all of those people dying, the interaction she has with Theo, and her becoming more humanized. I think all of that culminates with what we see with her in those final moments where she understands that this is bigger than her own desires. And so what does she do? She makes two very significant choices that I love from a writing and from a performance standpoint, where she says, we need 3 rings because this has to be balanced. The stakes are too high for us to mess up right now. We need 3 for balance. And then the other thing she does is she gives up the sword.
Yeah.
Which symbolizes her giving up her quest for vengeance.
Yeah.
She's done with that now. She's able to move on from this very singular desire that is all about her. And now we can look at, Middle Earth as a whole, and how can we bring unity as the darkness is literally starting to envelop Middle Earth. I love that. I think that's great. And I think that is going to set her up to really evolve in over the course of the next few seasons into the Galadriel we know and love in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, the Sauron teases her like, oh, like I can make you a queen. I was like, that's another Fellowship of the Ring kind of reference when she was like, oh, like if you gave me the ring, you would have a queen and all that. She goes all ballistic and stuff. I was like,
which I love that moment, by the way.
Yeah, that was I'm like, man, Sauron is such a sly dog. I was like, wow, this man knows his stuff. Like, I was like,
well, and I kind of wonder if we're going to get something in the next season where that temptation, maybe it doesn't quite get the best of her, but maybe the temptation of the power of the rings does carry some heft for her that she is recalling in that moment with Frodo when she's like, do not tempt me with this ring because I know the damage that can be done. Maybe it's not just a reference toward Isildur and everything that happens with him and the power of the One Ring broadly speaking, but maybe some personal experience. Maybe these 3 rings that she helps forges causes some personal conflict for her that she harkens back to in that moment with Frodo. I'm going to be curious to see where that goes, because I think now that we've laid down the revenge thing, which I didn't really love, but with where this has all gone to now, and I did kind of say even in those first 2 episodes, let's see where this goes.
Yeah,
I don't love this fundamentally, but maybe they'll make sense of it, and I think on the whole they did.
Yeah, I think they did.
Assuming that her giving up the dagger symbolizes that she's moved on, and I think that is the case.
I think so. Yeah,
and I think they handled it right.
Yeah, this entire time, it was hard to see the end of the road, but I would say between like 6, 7, and 8, those are probably like some of the best episodes we've gotten. I mean, there's a few stragglers in there, but really probably only about maybe like 2 to 3 episodes. But yeah, overall, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens to season 2. Now that it's more familiarized. Like, okay, I know that Amazon doesn't have like all the rights to like the Silmarillion, so they have to like dance around a few things. But
yeah,
I mean, they've done a really great job with trying or bringing Lord of the Rings back into like our lives, because I mean, yeah, there's the Hobbit movies, but this is more long form storytelling, and we kind of just get to see how things unfold. Maybe one day we'll get like a sequel to Lord of the Rings. I don't know, but we'll see.
I'll see. All right. Well, let's talk some final thoughts here. Let's wind this thing up here a little bit, Christian. I want to bring up some predictions for season 2. And let's start off with Galadriel and Elrond. I think they're going to have a side affair. They're going to hook up.
Oh,
maybe some bedroom scenes in season 2. I think Derwin gonna murder his father.
I think so.
Or
an unfortunate accident's gonna happen.
Exactly. Pushed off a cliff. I think there's gonna be an accident of some sort.
His wife's very ruthless. We know this.
Exactly. What does she say? This is our kingdom. It's my kingdom and it's your kingdom. It's ours. They are totally going to kill him. Gandalf going to grow the beard. We're going to start to see the gray beard forming.
The hat?
You're gonna get the
Yeah.
Gandalf beard.
Oh yeah.
Sauron he's gonna
Get that
forge the
helmet.
helmet. Gonna get the helmet going.
Yeah.
What else? They
Something with Sildor. We'll find out where he is.
Sildor,
Probably.
yeah, we'll find out
Hopefully.
more with him. He found the One Ring. No, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. It's not gonna happen.
My friend was like, "Is he dead?" I was like, "Have you ever watched Lord of the Rings?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, then you know he's out there, right?
Yeah.
Like he's." But
Yeah.
yeah, he was like, "Oh, that's the same guy." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah."
Nori is going to find a lost Harfoot, and this character is going to reveal that his name is Frodo.
Frodo.
Or Frodo. Maybe it's just Frodo, and that's
Yeah.
where the name comes from.
Maybe. That would be funny. I honestly, I think the Harfoots are gonna find
Frollo.
refuge in the Shire, probably
Yeah.
season 2 as well.
Yeah, we'll get to the Shire. We found the Shire. There's a big sign. It says, "Welcome to the Shire." This is where we're going to settle.
Like, that's it.
Maybe it'll be like the Oregon Trail,
Yeah,
and some of them will catch, fever on the way,
probably
bitten by rattlesnakes. Yeah, I haven't
way
played Oregon Trail in a long time, but whatever the hazards are, you get the drowning in a river.
they have survived season 1. They've lost one person.
Yeah.
I think that the odds are.
I mean, that's kind of what season 1 was. Sorry to cut you off, but they basically had their own Oregon Trail. That's more or less.
Yeah. They did. They know how to lay low when needed. They got those ghillie suits when they're they got the. I was like, okay, you guys are prepared. Let's go.
Maybe so. The land of the elves. So they have these rings, but do they stay there? Does it save their lands? Because at some point,
I would think so,
they
but I don't
shift,
know.
right?
Yeah, they do shift. I don't know what happens though. I can't remember, but I would assume the rings would save their lands because that was supposed to be the whole point of it. But maybe something else goes wrong. I mean, yeah, like we see Sauron's like finally going back to Mordor. We kind of get like the eye of Sauron as well. So Sauron's going to be doing Sauron things. I think it's nice that we finally have kind of like a personification of him, at least, even in like human form. But
yeah,
it's still him.
Yeah. So really curious for all of that. Thanks for listening, everybody. I think we've gone over the hour mark here, so I think we can wind down. I'm very excited. I think on the whole, while I've had some issues, I'm still satisfied with where things ended.
Yeah.
The last 4 episodes especially they were more consistent. And I think they've done a good job of building up character and stakes and drama without ever really needing to rely on heavy action, because we haven't really seen much.
Yeah,
there hasn't been a lot of action. There was the one episode, what was that, 6, right before Mordor blows up.
Yeah, the battle. Yeah, the Southlands.
That was really it. Like, other than the Battle of the Southlands,
we got a little bit in episode 1 where Galadriel's taking her excursion to like the ends of the earth, and they're like, "I want to go home."
Sauron beating up on some locals. Like, aside from that, like, there hasn't been a lot. It's mostly been character and theme and drama, and it's been taking its time. And so I'm excited to see where things go. Once again, thank you to our patrons. You guys are the best. Thank you for supporting us. If you're listening to this after it is released to the public, thank you as well. Again, that's patreon.com/InSessionFilm. Sign up there. You get early access to all of these bonus content episodes. And thanks, Christian, for joining me, man. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed getting to do these with you.
Yeah, seriously, thank you so much for having me on, because I was I was worried no one really wanted to talk about Rings of Power because I mean I know I guess House of the Dragon has been more of the I guess you can call it the more popular show in a way because it but either way I'm enjoying both of them equally. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I was very, I feel very fortunate to actually been able to talk about this with you because it's Lord of the Rings is back. I'm very, very excited, and Amazon has they have their shows that people tune in on, but they're really pushing this. Like everything that I've bought from Amazon within the past few weeks has come in this Lord of the Rings, watch Lord of the Rings on Amazon Prime. I'm like, they really want people to watch this. I mean, and rightfully so. They have pumped a lot of money into this. Yes. Honestly, I would say it's way too much, but man, it looks freaking.
It does look great. No, the money is being invested and spent very well for sure. So
let's get more of that pacing. Let's hope the pacing keeps up.
No, I want it to stay. It is going to uptick. It is, but I want it to stay like this.
Yeah.
You don't need to go crazy.
That's true.
But we'll see. Anyway, thanks for being here, Christian. This was a lot of fun. I'm happy to say that I am Team Galadriel now.
Hex yeah.
Going forward. Thanks for listening, everybody. We will see you all next time on the In Session Film Podcast.